Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show. I'm Joe, your host, and I'm really excited about my guest today. She's someone who I've gotten the chance to listen to and get to know a little bit over the last year at least. And when she shares, I listen. And so I'm really excited to have Angie on the show. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Angie, and then we'll say hello to her. So to Angie H to the Cup of Joe Show. Angie has been sober since August 22nd, 2014, and she's celebrating 10 years of recovery. Originally from Chicago, I have to give a shout out to my bonus daughter who just moved to Chicago. So hi, Emma. She grew up with her brother and sister and is a proud aunt to two wonderful nieces and an awesome nephew. Angie loves planning fun adventures with friends, whether it's hiking, exploring new restaurants, or attending concerts. She also enjoys learning new things, Christian music, and like me, is a fellow cat lover. She shares her home with two furry companions, Sam and Hobbs. So I am really grateful you decided to join us. How you doing, Angie?
Doing great. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, Joe.
I'm so glad you're here. So you grew up in Chicago. So what was it like growing up in Chicago?
Well, it was cold, but it was good. I mean, I moved there when I was 5 and grew up there all my life in the suburbs, just outside of the city, about 30 miles outside of Chicago. So
okay,
it was good.
Nice. So so you had a good childhood. Was there anything that how was your relationship with your mom and dad and your siblings and all that stuff?
Yeah, I have a twin sister and an older brother. And my mom moved us by herself. My parents divorced when we were 5 to Illinois. It was, I guess people my age anyways, we were latchkey kids. So nobody was really home. We had a key. We didn't have a key. The door was always open. I mean, that's kind of, people refer to it as being feral, Gen X,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we pretty much took care of ourselves. My mom was gone at work or school a lot. So we just pretty much raised ourselves until she graduated college. So there was really nobody home with us for quite a while, it seemed. She traveled even for work sometimes after she got more into computer science stuff. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's pretty neat. Yeah, I'm a latchkey kid myself. Go Gen X. And,
right.
So were there any like early influences on your life? Any that you think of?
Positive influences, probably a lot of teachers and stuff. That was pretty much the majority. Maybe some neighbors, but that was about it. That was about it. I mean, it was just, a free for all the time,
Yeah.
So there wasn't any really adult around, to help raise us or anything.
Yeah. Did looking back, do you think some of that may have contributed to,
Oh, for sure. For sure. It contributed to my alcoholism. I would say only because, I had to learn to figure out how to live life using my own little tools, and as a kid growing up, it wasn't anybody really around to show us what not to do or what to do. Right. So, we pretty much just raised ourselves. And like I said, there's a lot of things that were missed, like reaction and responding and, understanding emotions and feelings and behaviors and stuff like that. So a lot of that was left up to just reaction and reacting. And grew up in a kind of, I would say, my brother, grew up, he was very angry and a lot when we were kids. So there was a lot of fighting going on in the house all the time. It created a very reactive environment. My brother and I have a very good relationship today. And we've talked about these things and straightened them out thanks to AA. I've been able to work through a lot of the past issues that I had. But yeah, in my childhood, there was, nobody there. There was a lot of fighting going on. There was a lot of just flying by the seat of our pants. So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. I really do. So, did you notice like early on any addictive behaviors you might have had? Did anything,
addiction
out?
In my family, not necessarily my mom and not necessarily my dad, but it definitely runs in our family. We had family members beyond just my mom and dad that have, what you would probably consider a drinking problem.
Right.
But it's not really talked about in my family. It's not really something that, we knew about it, or even recognized as being a disease, or being, alcoholism for that matter. I have had 3 first cousins die from, I would say, this disease, but in some instances it was called diabetes, and, but in some instances it was caused by, something else. But
right.
My one cousin, he was sober 10 years by the grace of God. But, I think what he died from probably was not helped by the fact that he was an alcoholic for many years before he got sober. And I think that just shows, like in our family, I was grateful to see him, get sober. He was sober long before I was sober, which was pretty, amazing to see that come through in the family the way that it did. But yeah, so I've had 3 first cousins pass away from this. So.
Wow. And how old were you when you took your first drink?
When I had my first drink, I was probably 13, and I was cool. And I was, just trying to hang out with older kids, older friends. I had a lot of older friends. And by the time I was 14, I had a 21-year-old boyfriend. So, I mean, that helped. You would think, oh, she's, dating him or liked him because he could buy her alcohol. And that really wasn't the case. He was just somebody who was around, who paid me attention.
Right.
Yeah, he was a really nice guy, actually, in a lot of ways, as wrong as that is, 14-year-old and a 21-year-old, as wrong as that picture really is. He was really, nice to me, really good to me. And until, I finally realized, hey, like I'm in high school. I should probably be dating high school kids. But I did drink a lot with them and party a lot with them and do some drugs with them. Not all those drugs that a lot of people have done, but I mean, I do party and drink with them. But alcohol for me at that time was still extremely manageable. It was just about fitting in.
Okay. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so you talked a little bit about high school. What was your high school experience like? Was that?
I was a wallflower. I didn't know anybody. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. I hung around with people that were older than me. I hung around with people who were younger than me. I never really had like a clique or a group of girls that I, felt like I could relate to. So I just kind of like bounced between different types and groups of people, made friends where I could, like, again, I felt very awkward. I was like that kid that would, you would pay $10 to sew your, pillows together or whatever, like from sewing class. Yeah. And you would pay me $10. Well, then I got into sewing everybody's stuff for them, but they were paying me $10 to do all their sewing for them. So I would do that for them. So I was like the one who would write the book reports for the kids who didn't want to write the book reports.
You were making a living, Angie.
I was in a way, but oddly enough, I refused to get a job until I turned 16. I don't know. My brother and sister used to hate me for that because they were just like, get a job. I'm like, no, I don't have to yet legally.
Yeah. You were making too much money with the side hustles, it sounds
right?
like.
With the side hustles I had going on. So yeah, I was one of those kids. I was just, a student aid, teacher aid, first hour and eighth hour. So those two teachers became like my father figures in a way. They were like a parent to me in a way because I was so young, but they kept me focused and structured and gave me a place to go to help out and be, helpful. And that made me feel good. So that was really, a great thing because in high school, again, I didn't feel like I fit in there. We moved away like middle of our freshman year. So at that time that we were going to be, going from junior high to high school with all the kids and the friends that we did have, we moved mid freshman year. Well, that didn't work out. My mom didn't marry that guy. So we moved back. And by then it was high school. So everybody had found their little groups in freshman year. So we moved back sophomore year and it was like back to being awkward all over again and not having all those same friends because we had moved away and didn't, weren't necessarily in a place where we could stay connected. So, so that was a little awkward coming back in, but I was smoking cigarettes by then and I was smoking pot and, like doing a little bit of drugs here and there, but had some, like I said, all these different groups of friends. So not necessarily one specific group.
So it was kind of sounds like you had a lot of people, but not like really close people, like people that didn't really know you in a way. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Yeah. I had like a best friend.
Okay.
Like, whereas like my twin sister had tons of friends, and she had groups of friends that she hung around with. I kind of followed her around until she'd let me, or we would fight and she would tell me to stop following her around and get my own friends. But I eventually, just found that one friend that would be like my best friend for a little while. So yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and you mentioned your twin. What was that relationship like, and did that impact drinking or anything like that?
No, she was actually a bigger partier than I was, because she had all those friends, so again, we weren't that close. I'd say growing up, like I said, in high school, it was like I tried to hang around with her and her friends, and she just wouldn't let me sometimes, and then sometimes I'd hang around with her and her friends anyways, and try and make be friends with them too. And it worked for a little while, but then my sister and I would fight. So we ended up eventually finding our own separate ways. We kind of like ebb and flow. It wasn't, like, ooh, I have a twin. We were like best friends forever.
Right.
And like we had I guess almost like regular sibling rivalry going on.
Okay.
Very competitive between the two of us. Mm-hmm.
That's what I was thinking. Like the assumption is, well, you have a twin, you have a built-in best friend. Like, that's so.
Yeah. No, not always.
Yeah. That's interesting to hear. It really, so you're in, did anything happen in high school that, that might've, caused you to kind of go, or was that later on that, as far as drinking or drugs or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I hung around with a lot of the, the burnout kids, so to speak, because I was smoking cigarettes and wearing black leather jackets and all that, heavy eyeliner and partying like that. But no, not really. Nothing really happened in high school with alcohol. I was so focused, and I dated a guy for a long time when I was 18, 19, 20. And he was a little bit older than me and old enough to drink. And so, but I remember just, being at his house and his parents were away, and I would be throwing everybody out of the house because I had to get I was going to community college and I had to get to college the next day. So I was the person, the bummer girlfriend that's standing at the top of the stairs going, get out of the house. I have to go to school tomorrow. And they were all like, why are you still with her?
Yeah. You were responsible.
I was trying to be responsible. So see, like the whole drinking and partying thing wasn't fully engaged with me yet.
Right.
And the funniest thing was it was with him, and he ended up going to rehab. And
Oh, wow.
I remember sitting in rehab with him and his dad, while he was, we went to visit him or something. And all he did was make better contacts and a new girlfriend. So,
Yay.
That ended eventually,
I can see that.
Yeah.
So you went to community school. Did you finish community college?
Yeah, community college was good. And my sister did help me there. I was taking all the basket weaving classes you could take. And she kind of like chimed in because she went away to school a little bit, like a month or two before me, but she was super helpful. And when I hit college, so I got in college a little after her, but she helped me turn things around and take the right classes so I could get out of community college. And when I hit college, boy, it was like a party time, it was a big party time. I mean, I lived a couple floors above my sister, and she in the dorms that we were in. And so we didn't room together, but I tried to hang around with her and study with her again. And if she ever hears this, she's probably going to kill me. But, she just wouldn't let me hang around with her. She wouldn't let me study with her. She wouldn't let me go places with her. And, and I just, was again in that awkward place where, I didn't know what to do. So eventually I made a few friends here and there, but again, college was really hard for me to get through. So eventually I found a boyfriend and quit college and moved into a mobile home. That was really what my father wanted for me. Go easy.
No, I hear you.
That was not his dream.
Yeah.
He's living in a mobile home. Great.
Yeah. So how long did that relationship last, if you don't mind me asking?
That did not last. That lasted a little bit, but not long. I mean, I moved in with him and quit, and my dad just kind of said, well, at least you met somebody.
Yeah.
And but when I started drinking, that's when I started to get a little bit more aggressive and angry when I would drink. And because I'd see him flirting with somebody or something like that, and it would get super, I'd get super angry really fast. Okay. So eventually that whole thing kind of like fell apart, and it fell apart in lots of anger and lots of rage, driven by alcohol, also driven by fear, driven by insecurities and 100 other things. But so I, eventually realized that I had to leave that relationship because it was just getting really bad. So, and I, called my mom up, and she was living in the North Woods of Michigan, in middle of nowhere, and was like, okay, we'll come get you, and packed all my stuff up and moved to the North Woods in the middle of nowhere. That didn't last long either. So
no matter where we go, there we are. Right?
Yeah, I do remember that being the first time I would have a beer with a friend over the phone. And I remember kind of telling myself it was okay. See, I'm not drinking alone. You know, I'm in the North Woods. I don't know anybody up here, but I want to have a drink. And I don't have any friends. I'm 40 miles to the nearest McDonald's. That's how far out we were.
Wow.
So I bought some beer because by then I was old enough and to drink. And I'm like, I'll call so-and-so and we'll just have a beer together over the phone, So, but eventually I ended up, I think I made it there 6 months with my dog. My dog ran away or whatever. My mom and my stepdad, they didn't really want me there. So, so that ended pretty quick. And I threw everything in my Jeep Wrangler after causing lots of chaos and craziness up in the North Woods, and headed back down to Chicago. And I moved in with my sister and, shared a little studio apartment with her for a little while. And until that kind of fell apart too. So, took about a year or so, but I got a job and I started going back to school, and I I started doing all the right things and, wasn't really, drinking as much then either. I was focusing. I had school. I had 2 jobs. So I was really focused.
Your story is like so familiar to me. Honestly, I worked multiple jobs. Well, the only difference is it took me 6 years to get out of community college. So you got out a little quicker than I did. But I always worked several jobs and went back and forth. And finally, so did you finally get a degree? If not, did you finish?
I did. I mean, I got my associate's degree. And then when I got back down to Chicago, the second time I found a really great company to work for, and they paid 100% tuition and 50% books. Wow. And that was awesome. Yeah. So I got into that company. And then I also figured out at my age, I think by that time I must have been about 25. I figured out, or somebody opened a door, pointed me in the direction that if you're female and over the age of blah, 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 the state of Illinois would give you a grant to go back to school and help pay for some of your stuff. So in addition to working for this, I still had money I had to pay, but I still had rent and a car payment. So this little extra from the state, this grant that they gave you, helped me pay for things like my books and stuff.
Right.
So that was super helpful. And I finally graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science database design.
Oh, wow.
So I really liked computers. That, my whole family's kind of in computers except for my brother, but so I really liked working on computers and stuff. And that was what I got my degree in. And, it was a really good thing. Things were still really good for me. I bought my first condo, a condo apartment, 1 bedroom, and, saved obviously for that up to a point, and was able to buy something like that at that young of an age. So,
yeah, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So you're working, and when did alcohol start creeping into your life more?
Yeah, alcohol started creeping in right after that, right after, all of those really great things happened in my life,
Yeah.
Alcohol started creeping in, and I started going to parties with friends that were still, out, because for years I was going to night school. So I wasn't out at night. So now I'm going out at night with friends, and I went to a party with some friends from high school, and one of my friends left me there, and this guy took advantage of me when I was drunk. And so that kind of like snowballed a whole bunch of shame and guilt. And I remember my sister coming to get me the next day, and just, feeling horrible inside. And so I just stuffed that down and, talked about going to therapy, but just never went to therapy. And, over the next few years, my drinking just, started to get worse and worse, not just because of that incident, but other incidences that happened. I've never had a DUI. By the grace of God, I know I deserved plenty of them. I've never had, certain things happen, but it always just seemed to, in my relationships, when it came to alcohol, end in a fight or an argument or anger. So there was a lot of stuff going on there. And like I said, in the beginning, drinking, at that point when I got out of school and started doing, being able to go out and do stuff, just kept getting worse and worse. I was, like I said, doing a lot of drinking and driving, but I remember at some point being at the bar almost 7 days a week and being like, oh my God, like, is this life? This is all there is, and I was doing all the typical, I'm going to stop drinking, on Wednesday because, I drank on the last 2 days. Well, then it was Thursday, and that was like the weekend starting. So then you couldn't stop then. But none of it really occurred to me that it was a problem, I was a fully functioning alcoholic in the sense that I was making it to work every day. I was an overachiever. I was, working hard and playing hard. Didn't I deserve that? That was my MO, work hard, play hard. And, but I was not doing well in any of the relationships I was trying to have or maintain. Like the guys that I dated, it wasn't necessarily always their fault that a fight broke out.
Right.
I know I had a lot to do with that, but then, like piling on, and eventually I remember blacking out starting to happen. And again, I did not associate that with drinking whatsoever. For whatever reason, I don't forget what happened last night, was just something that happened, I don't know.
Right.
I never really thought about it. And I just remember, towards the end of my drinking, going to certain family functions and again, I learned all of this after I got into AA, was like when I was honest with myself. But, the lies we tell ourselves, I'm going to 5 different liquor stores in 1 week, and I'm really avoiding going to the same one twice because I don't want them to see me twice. Yeah. But I didn't realize that was a problem. I guess I never asked myself that the normal person doesn't do that, and I had a really horrible boyfriend, and he didn't, he acted like he cared about me, but he didn't. And I had him for a long time in my life. He was very narcissistic. And so I was completely, constantly being gaslit and blindsided by, was that true? Was that real? Did that happen? Did that not happen? Like, like making me second guess a lot of things. And so I ended up going into therapy because, I was at the bar one night, and I must have been in a complete blackout. And there was a guy there. There was a lot of people there apparently, but there was a guy there who saw me that night. But the next day, I do what I typically do, is right back to the bar on a Sunday. I remember it being a Sunday, getting a beer. And this guy comes up to me and goes, "Can I talk to you outside?" And I'm like, "Sure." And he looks at me and he goes, "I don't know what's going on with you, but whatever it is, you need to leave. You don't belong here." Like whatever it was, like he's, I'm like all attitude,
Right.
So I'm like, what, but inside I knew there was something going on. Like I was really angry. My boyfriend was being a jerk. I knew I was at the bar the night before. He must have seen me the night before in a blackout and was now like coming up to me the next day and being like, I don't know what's going on. I know I don't know you that well. I don't even, at the time, I didn't even know his name. Right. And he's like, "You just need to leave. You don't belong here." And it was a huge like God moment for me when I look back, because I needed to leave there, and what it really did for my drinking was sent me into isolation. And so I started isolating and drinking because I can't go there, and then that terrible boyfriend I had insisted, that I go to therapy. And so I, go to therapy, and they just want to throw medication at me. And I don't want to go to be on medication. And so I go to his therapist, and his therapist, because there's nothing wrong with him. So he's going to send me to his therapist and get me fixed, right? So I go to his therapist. Yeah, such a winner. And so I go to his therapist, and I tell the therapist, I'm drinking 7 days a week, like there's got to be more to life, and he immediately, when I walked in the room, if I take a step back, his therapist was like, "Man, are you angry?" Like he could just, I just entered a room filled with anger and rage, like inside, he just knew it, and, but I said to something about my drinking, and he said, "Well, just go to the gym 4 days and go to the bar 3. That was his solution. And I was just like, "Oh, okay." Like never said you might have a drinking problem, because I was telling him how we do the political tour on Friday night, which means we hit like 4 bars. So I'm drinking and driving at 4 bars, and I am hanging around with people who are heavy drinkers. Or they're alcoholics or they're heavy drinkers. But either way, I'm keeping up with them, and they're a lot older than me, and they're going home, and I'm still staying at the bar.
Right.
And, I've had a few scary incidences, in between that moment and the few times before. So there was, other incidences where I should not have been driving, or I barely remember the walk home, or I was walking backwards and then walking forwards and then still driving. It was bad. But so this therapist was really great in the sense that he might not have actually been honest with me about my drinking or, brought that up, but he was able to chip away at this wall that this person that I was with had built around me, and he chipped away at it to the point that, when I was going to stop seeing him as a therapist, he actually said, if you continue to see this guy and calm and don't see me as your therapist, I will not take your call. So he just knew that this guy had a grip on me and was pretty manipulative and messed up to the point that he just wasn't going to completely cut the tie with me. But when the time was right, he did. And I'll tell you, by then he had done enough separating between the damage done and the manipulation of this guy that I was able to, in a healthy way, walk away from that person confidently, where, I was so beaten down by the time I had gotten in that therapist's door. So I am grateful, even though, he didn't point out the drinking thing, he got me away from that very bad relationship. So that was really good. And I still wasn't ready or even knew anything about AA. So I was still isolating at home and drinking at home, still trying to work, still drinking at home. I had some really bad things happen in the office environment that I won't get into, but let's just say it just piled on all the rest. It was just, everything was piling in pretty deep. My dad passed away in the midst of all of that. And I'm pretty sure that's when my alcoholism really took off, because I remember thinking, I got this, I'm going to be okay. But I never dealt with the grief and the loss of my dad, and stuff just, again, started to pile on and snowball out of control after my dad passed away, because he wasn't around at all when we were kids, really. But he was, our dad that he could be. He was just as selfish and self-centered as my mom could be, but I mean, like he was still my dad. So sure. But when he passed, I think everything just really off to the races it went, and that ex-boyfriend would still show up and put liquor on my balcony. And, but never told me I had a problem. And I wouldn't talk to him, and he'd be like, left you a bottle of wine, but it didn't occur to me, like, he must have known I had a problem and drinking and stuff. But so I finally was able to get myself away from him and slowly try to incorporate life back in. But slowly towards the end, I wasn't really going anywhere. I was drinking every night until I was blacking out or passing out. I was watching the show Intervention every night, crying my eyes out, because these people had someone in their lives that loved them so much that they were trying to help save their life. And I'm drinking and crying because I don't have anybody in my life like that. I mean, my family's not close like that. We're not close like some families can be, and so nobody knew I was drinking that way. It's not their fault. I did a phenomenal job of hiding it. I mean, if I went to the winery and bought 6 bottles of wine with my sister and half of them were gone by Tuesday and she came over, she would be like, what do you mean? You only got 2 left or something. And then I'd be like, can't invite her over, like in the back of my mind, unknowingly, this disease, don't invite her over, or make sure you get more before she comes in. Right. But I didn't see any of that as being this disease. And then, and so those little things started to happen a lot. They go into different liquor stores, hiding, drinking before I go to the family party. And then only drinking a few at the family party because I've got a case of beer and vodka and whatever else my little heart could desire at home in my own refrigerator. So then I would go home and finish the night out at my house by myself, drinking however I wanted. And I remember, I had all the same excuses they talk about. It was a good day. It was a bad day. I made myself a nice dinner. I worked really hard. It snowed. Eventually it was just about anything. Right. So eventually that's kind of like where it ended. And I ended up losing my job. And I'm not going to say it was due to drinking, but I would say the alcoholism was in full effect,
Right.
I'm walking around with anger. I'm walking around with all the things hanging all over me. I am barely keeping my head above water, trying to get, to my job, but I didn't get let go because of, I was, a bad behavior or there was alcohol on my breath. I just, I got let go because there was ego involved, mine and others,
right.
But I ended up then having to come off my medication. I was on like a antidepressant, and I thought, "Ooh, this is going to be fun." Just can't afford it anymore, and so that was fun. And then I was like, well, walking a dog for like $10, trying to find another job. And I did eventually find another job, and that one fell apart, and then I get in a year, and then I found another job, and that one fell apart. And eventually, I was, my sister kept trying to get me to go to church, her church with her and stuff. And I'm not a church person. I wasn't a church person at the time and stuff. And I was like, why, like, can't we just go out and have dinner and drinks or whatever for our birthday? Like, why do we have to do this? Or why can't we just do that? And I went to her church and I didn't like it. And it just wasn't for me. And she would, joking, I always joke, she would intentionally change my radio stations in my car to Christian channels. I get so mad at her, but this whole time I'm still drinking, and I'm every night, and nobody in my family really knew, the way I was drinking.
Right.
And eventually she gave me this Bible with for Christmas one year. And I was like, why do you give this thing to me? I don't read the Bible. I don't go to church, and the next year she gave me another one with my name engraved on it. And I'm like, why do you keep giving me this thing, Yeah. And, but in the back of that Bible, that second one she gave me, it was like, you could look up things, like love and patience, or, just like anything. And then it tells you where to go look in the Bible. I don't even know what they call that kind of Bible, but so in the midst of all of my drinking, I kept that at the side of my bed, and every once in a while I'd pick it up and I'd look up something in the back and I'd put it back down. And then this day that I picked it up and I looked up love, in the Bible, and it said, go to all these Bible verses, like you could go look and read about it. And I was reading in the book of John and about love. And I was just like, left that open Bible on my chest and asked something that I didn't really believe in to search my heart, because I had no idea what was going on in my life, nothing. Yeah. And then I closed that Bible and I went in the living room like I, did every day at 3-4 o'clock, and lit all my candles and was going to get a drink, because that's what my time was, about 4 o'clock. It was getting earlier and earlier, but it was about 4 o'clock. And I hear this little whisper in my ear that says, you need to go to AA. And I was like, oh, like, we'll ignore that, About a year and a half before, I had met a guy on a train who was friends with the family at a party. He's dating one of the cousins and the family over there. And I would ride the train with him every day for like the year that I was working downtown. And he had this calm about him. And I knew he was in AA. And I thought, he's never going to survive this family, right? So, because we're heavy Polish drinkers, and so, but I remembered his peace, and so I think back, like, that might have been where the seed was planted of, look, he's getting along with this family and he's not drinking, like there was a little seed planted there, I think, and that peacefulness that he had about him, just in his energy and stuff. And I think that's where the whisper, was God. And it was because of that person that was, who I had not seen now in over a year, but I used to ride the train with, and I knew him a little bit more. I knew again that he was sober. And so I heard that whisper and I continued to drink anyways. Right. And I drank till about a time that I passed out because the vodka was gone. And I remember laying in bed, ready to pass out like I normally did. And I got up out of bed and I texted him because I had his number, and I said, I think I have a drinking problem. And he said, he immediately texted back and said, good, let's talk tomorrow. Because I'm pretty sure at 10:30 at night, he's probably thinking I'm already drunk, right? Which I was. Right. So I was like, fine. And I passed out. And then the next day I look at my phone and I'm like, oh my God. I told somebody, And so he was going to call me at like 8:00 or 7:00 at night or something. And I'm like, inside of me, I'm like, I'm going to hold on until 7:00 tonight. I'm going to talk to him and I'm going to tell him how I'm drinking. And he's going to tell me I don't have a problem. Right. And so I talked to him and he's like, are you drinking now? I'm like, that maybe just a little, like I had like a little glass of vodka in front of me or whatever. And he's like, okay. And so I tell him, and he's like, I'm 99% sure you have a problem. And I'm like, okay. So he's like, but you got to go to these meetings. You got to go down to this church and go down these stairs, and these women will come around you. And my head is immediately going, not a snowball's chance in hell. Yeah. By going to that church, to that meeting, and all these women, was not a fan of women at all. I've been burned so many times by friends and, whatever. Right. I was not going to go to a church and have all these women get around me. So I remembered this girl, Amy, that I was in high school with, and she was in this thing called AAA, and it was 100 years ago. I hadn't seen her in a very long time. And he basically said, if she's not going to meetings, she's not sober. But I'm like, well, I'm friends with her on Facebook. I don't have her phone number or anything. So that night before I hung up with him, and I'm going to that meeting, right? I'm not going to that meeting. And so I put a message to her on Facebook, and she responds like right away. She's like, what's up, Ange? What's going on? Blah, 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 and she, I pinged her a few things, and she sent me her number. And we talked a little bit, and she's like, I'll take you to a meeting. I'll take you to a meeting. And I'm like, okay, she's like, I'll come pick you up. And I'm like, okay. So I pretty much dumped my vodka out that night, and she picked me up the next day to take me to my first meeting. And it was at the Rosemont Horizon, the 75th AA convention, state convention.
Holy crap.
Rosemont Horizon. And she takes me to this, we're going to go here, and I'm like, okay. And I'm all business in my head. I've been to conferences, I've been to hotels. This is no big deal. This is, like going to be easy, So we go up to the babysitting room where they have a babysitters for people who have kids at this giant conference. And I look back at this today and been just in awe, but, and all these women come around at the babysitting room. And what that really was a first step meeting. It took me about 90 days to realize that was my first step meeting. Where they kind of take you to the side and talk to you about what's going on in their lives and what's going on in yours, Yeah. And so I'm like, why are they all interested in me? But, but apparently that was my first step meeting in the babysitting room. And then we go down to this conference, and Amy's like, she's new. People are like, oh, we're so glad you're here. And they have this light in their eyes, and they have smiles on their faces, and they're like so happy, and they're hugging me. And I'm like, oh my God, just stop touching me, and and it's funny because I remember walking through the hallways of the conference, because then they had all these breakout sessions that we were going to on all these things called steps, and we would walk past the bar, and I'd look, but I didn't have a desire to go in there. And I followed her around through this meeting, and the next night, and then she took me home, and I didn't drink, and the next night she picked me back up. She took me back to a meeting in town before we went over to a smaller like group meeting in town. And I just sat there scared to death. And, then she took me back to the big conference. And at the end of the night, we went for dinner, where they do the big countdown. And I'm sitting there, and she's like, all you have to do is listen. All you have to do is listen. All you have to do is listen and stuff. And then they get down to like day 2. And she's like, elbows me and goes, stand up, stand up. Sober. And she's like, stand up. And I stand up and you hear the whole room like whoosh, like this, all these heads turn. And I'm just like, did not know. And I stand up and I'm like, you know, and everybody just starts applauding. And I was the one with the lowest sobriety at that conference.
Wow.
And they're like, go up to the room. The lady with 50 plus years hands me one of the old big books that came out with back in 2014. It's like got the old cover on it and the ye old language in it. So she hands me this book and she's like, welcome, you are not alone anymore. And I think back to like 2 days before when I put that Bible on my chest and I asked the God that I didn't really believe in to search my heart. And 2 days later, I'm standing in a room of over 1,000 people who are sober, and they have this light in their eyes and this smile on their faces. And they are, you know, looking at me saying, you're not alone anymore, you know, and it just was like, that's how big God is, you know, like bigger than that even. But in my life at that time, he was super small. And so, you know, that's kind of how my journey started. And I am, and then I just ran at this program. It is like the monster, the beast was taken off of my chest. That day that I asked, I'm pretty sure that day that I said, search my heart, all of that weight was lifted. Now I've had a lot of cleaning up to do and work to do. And obviously like the rest of the world, like life gets lifey, as I've been hearing a lot lately. And so I've had a lot of cleaning up to do, but that initial weight, that beast that woke me up every morning, that beast that wanted to, you know, just destroy everything was gone, completely gone, you know, and I ran at this program fast and hard. It was like my sponsor would read the big book to me and I'd pretty much look at her and be like, I know. Isn't it great? She'd be like, you know, reading something like, you know, out of the big book in the beginning, especially. And I would be like, it's like I already knew the big book. Like she's telling me something that my insides are just doing cartwheels. Like, I know. Do you believe it says that? I can't believe it says that. I mean, like, you know, we must be rid of it or it kills us. And I'd be like, right? you know? One of those overachiever sponsors, you know, I need you to read this. I did twice. I even gave it 2 stars, you know.
Twice. It's my 13th forced. I've
got it highlighted in colors and shades of purple and blue, and you know.
Yeah.
I can honestly say that, you know, I've had, you know, 9 to 10 sponsors too, though. So some of them have left on, they never showed up, or, you know, you go through that. Right. Some of them I chose because I knew they weren't going to push me very hard. And then some of them were there for some of the most amazing experiences I've ever had, you know. Today I have an amazing sponsor that is just blowing my mind all over again, like day one, where I'm sitting back. Instead of saying, I know, I'm just sitting back going, wow, I never saw it that way. I never saw it that way, you know, but that's what this program is about. You know, when you come in, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and the things that I'm learning today are definitely nothing that I would have been able to handle when day one, you know, or year 3. You know? And I'm grateful that that I've been able to stay sober, you know, through a lot of not so great things, and I'm still got a lot of work to do ahead of me. So, and I stay in the middle. I stay in the middle out of fear, you know. Yeah. And I stay in the middle because I do believe this disease is alive and well. And I do believe that it's, you know, as we say in the program, in the parking lot doing push-ups. And I feel like I have, you know, been given a gift. I truly do believe that. And I truly do believe that I want to, you know, really help somebody else who can't find their way out of the dark. Because I didn't know, you know, based upon the show Intervention, I didn't know that there were rehabs and stuff like that, even though it was on TV. I didn't feel I had anybody in my life that, you know, was able to come around me and be like, hey, you know, there's something going on, except for that one guy who, you know, pulled me out of the bar and said, you don't belong. Right. You know, like, I don't even know if family would have said it if I would have heard it. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes we can't hear it from people that are closest to us because we need to hear it from an outside place. And I just think God had his hands written and touched all over this experience of my life. And so I would be a disservice not to try and help another person who is struggling in some way, or, try and help them to see it,
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if there was somebody listening that was struggling, what would be a suggestion you would have for them?
I would suggest that they would, go to a meeting, go to different meetings, go to book meetings, go to a big book meeting, go to a 12 and 12 meeting, go to the topic meetings, and sit and listen for the similarities and not the differences. Yeah. Because that's where I heard my stories. That's where I heard my truth. I'm not saying that I sat in the back in the room and went, at first was like, that's me, like inside I said, that's me. Yeah. Quietly, like, ooh, that's me. I'm doing that. I am pre-gaming before I go to family parties. Yeah. I am planning all the liquor in the refrigerator when I get home from the party. I am not traveling places because I'm not going to be able to drink the way I want to drink when I get there. Like, this is what other people talked about in their stories. And that's when I started to be honest with myself. So that would be my suggestion, is to keep an open mind, look for the similarities and not the differences. And nobody says you have to jump up and acknowledge to anybody that that's you. But inside, enough times you can't deny the fact that it is, it is taken over my life, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what's taken over your life today?
I would say living in a lot of different ways, and AA, I love, going to meetings. I love, all the different meetings that I go to, whether they're online and I'm meeting new friends in Rhode Island, or I'm meeting friends in Boynton Beach, Florida, or I'm meeting new friends face to face, that to me is pretty much what taken over my life. But living, because I have met friends in, this program that we do stuff together now. We have things to talk about rather than things to sit in the bar and drink about, life, especially when it sucks. I'm still, learning how to be a friend. I'm still learning how to be a better sister, how to be, a better aunt, and all of those things. But now I'm present for them. And that is a huge, huge difference. And, if I take the action like this program says, then I can stay sober. And staying sober means I get to be fully present in the good and the bad things in life. But I get to, I get a chance to feel my way through these things, which again, it's not always easy, but that is a bigger gift. What is that saying they have, like any day sober or any is better than any day, my worst day drunk or something like that. Or I don't know, maybe I got that backwards.
Close enough, Angie.
I can relate to that one, but anyways.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your story, and it really, I think it's so relatable. I think you're so relatable, and I really appreciate it. But I cannot let you go without doing our rapid fire questions.
Okay.
A friend of mine wants me to get a theme for that, like a theme, but I'm not there yet, Angie. Okay. I have to just do it with my mouth. But,
yeah.
So, all right. So here are your rapid fire questions.
Okay.
What is your favorite recovery slogan?
Oh my goodness. I was just looking this up today, but because I always say it wrong. And it says, don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand? The wind stopped blowing. That's one of my favorite sentences. Like there is awesome. One other one. That is the one that talks about how we'll recoil from alcohol as though it was a hot flame. But boy, I hear that little chirp of, ain't it grand, Ma? Or don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand? The wind stopped blowing.
That's awesome. That's great. What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
Oh, Oh my goodness. It's the one where they talk about the, you being the problem, and for the longest time when I would hear that, like for every, well, my one sponsor did that. For every one finger you point out, you've got 3 pointing back at you. But there is, that one to snap her finger right off. And
we're working on the anger. We're still working on the anger.
Yeah, just a little bit. That was early sobriety. That was probably the one thing in the big book she, kind of like took me through gently. But because it still kind of grinds me today. Like, the problem is with you, like that. Yeah. I could still fight that argument a little bit because there are a lot of sick people in this world. And sometimes, you don't have to do too much of anything for them just to be shitty. Yeah. So, sometimes it ain't me, I'm just saying.
I hear you. So what do you think is your sobriety superpower?
I don't know. I think speaking from my heart, because I feel like I have God in my heart because of sobriety, because of, because he kind of like was the one who told me to go to AA. So I think, I don't want to call it a superpower by any means, but I definitely feel like when I share, I try to share from the heart, So I don't know, maybe that would be it.
That's a great one. Well, if you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
I would tell myself, if I could say one thing, I would tell myself, that I'm amazing. I would tell myself that I matter, that I'm beautiful, that I don't deserve to be treated like crap from anybody. That's what I would tell myself. Mm-hmm.
What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Oh, I play a lot of Christian music to boost my spirits, Overcomer. And there's one out right now called Hallelujah. So a lot of Christian music, a lot of Lauren Daigle and, Mercy Me, oh my goodness. Yeah. Like, Mercy Me, like they're just Crowder, you name them. I listen to a lot of Christian music, and that always, always, always really boosts my mood. So,
if you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
Wow, if I grant myself one wish to help with my recovery, it would. It would be, I still feel like, as I'm working through my 4th step with my current sponsor, I still feel like there's an underlying, I don't know what it is, like almost an underlying, defect of character that, or something that attracts people that are not good.
All right.
Where it just, and maybe, I don't know, but I just feel like I still have this ability to, I don't even know if it's a character defect. I just, So maybe all of that really comes down to just letting go and not caring. So if I give myself one thing, it would just be to be able to like really just let it all go. Anything that comes my way. They say, let's walk in AA, walk through life like you're wearing a loose garment. Yeah. That would be something I would wish, that I could literally, whatever comes at me in this life, in good and bad, just walk through life like it's a loose garment. That would be what I would love to have.
What step do you love the most?
Oh, I love them all. I love them all. But I think, they all blow my mind. I can't pick just one. I mean, I use them all, and all of them have their own little thing about them that I love. I don't think there is one, I mean, all of them. I can't think of one that I just can't say that there is one. I mean, every time I think of one, I think of something I love about it, but then also that one. So
yeah.
I can't give
Well, then this next question's not going to work either for you. What step do you love the least?
Oh, wow. Let's see, like there are things that certain things, like some people would say the 4th step, but I've just had my mind blown quite a bit with this last 4th step. So I'm loving it,
Yeah.
I would say maybe the having to make amends is that step 9, because that's hard to do, but even after, but that's hard to do just in general,
Sure.
And to apologize for somebody's feelings I've hurt, but like sometimes I still don't even know that I've hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
Like my accent, my northern accent, some people.
Yeah, I get
it. So I'm like, I can't help that.
Yeah.
So.
What is your favorite curse word?
What do I usually say? I don't. I use them all sometimes. I probably done what the fuck,
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's probably one. Yeah.
I like it. And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
If heaven exists, what would I say to God? Oh, I would just like to say, him to say, you're home.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to
Well,
say. Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's really powerful, Angie.
Mm-hmm.
Your story is powerful. I think you're just amazing. I really do. And I really am grateful you took the time to share your story and your experience, your strength, your hope.
Yeah, so. Thank you for asking me. I know I started out a little bit slow, but
You did great. You did absolutely great. And I know that there are people that will find your story really relatable, and they'll get hope out of it. So thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. So we have a new episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show on your favorite podcast apps, Amazon Audio, Apple Podcast, Podbean, Spotify, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the, because there's lots of other Cup of Joe shows, but there's only one The Cup of Joe Show. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Angie.
Thank you.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's Experience, Strength, and Hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.